Live from the Pioneer PBS studios in Granite Falls, it's Meet the Candidates. This candidate forum is designed to inform you, the viewing public, about the candidates running for Minnesota state office in our region. Meet the Candidates is brought to you by the members of Pioneer PBS. This program features the candidates for Minnesota House District 16B. And now, your moderator for tonight's program, Mark Fokin.
Hello, and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm Mark Fokin. This Pioneer PBS presentation is intended to inform you about the candidates who seek election or re-election to the Minnesota Legislature. This segment features candidates who are on the ballot in House District 16B. They are incumbent Republican Representative Paul Torkelson and his challenger, DFL candidate Mindy Kimmel. First, a few words about the district and the communities within it.
Minnesota House District 16B is made up of portions of Redwood and Renville counties and all of Brown County. Major cities include New Ulm, Redwood Falls, and Sleepy Eye.
If you reside in this district, your questions will be given priority for all the candidates' answers. All Minnesotans, regardless of residency, are encouraged to join this conversation. Our intention is to let our viewers gain an understanding of legislative priorities. Please direct your questions via the methods listed on the bottom of the screen. Now, let's meet tonight's candidates. By a coin toss, the candidates have determined the order in which they will appear with their opening statement. We will start with Mindy Kimmel, the DFL challenger from New Ulm.
Thank you to Pioneer TV, our moderator, and to Mr. Torkelson, and all of those watching here today. My name is Mindy Kimmel. I was born and raised in New Ulm. My mom is a retired special education teacher, and my father is a bluegrass musician. I'm a mental health therapist who focuses on helping people and serving my community. I'm also the sixth generation in my family to live in Brown County. I'm running for the State House because I believe that we can do better. You deserve better than political games that result in extended special sessions at taxpayers' expense. You deserve performance, not passiveness. You deserve hard work, not coasting. This is a time when the government has got to get to work and work to keep Minnesotans safe, to make sure that we have what we need to not only survive this pandemic, but thrive once again. I have had Common Ground meetups across the district in New Ulm, Wabasso, Hanska, Redwood Falls, Sleepy Eye, Springfield, Morton, Morgan, and Franklin. This year, instead of meeting with you in person, I've been listening in other ways, by having Zoom meetings, and also by interviewing members of my community and posting their stories on my website and social media. I have heard about the difficulties you've been facing. Many of these stories are very personal, from farmers and teachers and childcare providers. I also have provided mental health wellness tips live for people during the stay-at-home order. I know this has taken a toll on you, and I am committed to fighting for the solutions that you need, stimulating small business, supporting profitable agriculture, sustaining quality education, and solving problems of expensive healthcare, lack of broadband internet, and scarce childcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. And now we'll hear from the Republican incumbent, Representative Paul Torkelson of Hanska.
Hello, my name is Paul Torkelson. I am the endorsed Republican candidate for Minnesota House District 16B. I'm running for my 7th term in this year's general election. First, I want to welcome our viewers and thank them for taking time out of their busy lives to learn more about the issues of the day, and thank them for spending some time getting to know the candidates running for office. I also want to thank the voters for their past support in 6 general elections, and more recently in my first ever primary contest. Election Day is almost here, and whether you have already voted or will vote on Election Day, I hope every registered voter will exercise their right to cast a ballot. It has truly been an honor to serve my constituents and represent them at the Capitol. I am proud of my record over these last 12 years representing my district and dealing with some of the most challenging issues of the day. The broad range of my experience in and out of the legislature has equipped me with the skills and perspectives that help me successfully represent my constituents. I have developed a good working relationship with the residents of 16B and likewise with a broad range of legislators, staff members, state agencies, lobbyists, and interest groups that are all part of the work I do. My work at the House involves activities that range far beyond what happens on the House floor or in committee. Much of what I do is centered around helping my constituents when they have an issue related to Minnesota government. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the public safety and health care professionals who put themselves and their families at risk to keep the rest of us safe and as healthy as possible. The governor's continued use of emergency executive power has resulted in a record number of special sessions in 2020. Eventually, this use of executive authority will come to an end, and I strongly support a cooperative agreement regarding how and when that will happen. In the meantime, I have worked to utilize special sessions to successfully pass legislation to help deputy registrars continue to serve the public, another bill helping organizations that provide services to the disabled, and finally passing a bonding bill that heavily invests in greater Minnesota infrastructure, coupled with tax conformity legislation that will help farmers and small business.
Thank you. Before we start the questions, just a quick reminder to the viewers at home that you can learn how to register to vote in Minnesota by visiting the Secretary of State's, Minnesota Secretary of State's website at mnvotes.org. Now, let's get started. As a reminder, the rules are that each question will be asked to both candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Both candidates will also have the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal if they so choose. We will alternate which candidate answers each question first. Now, our first question goes to Mindy Kimmel, and it is, what are the most important challenges facing your district, and what do you propose to address them?
The coronavirus has provided us with so many challenges, and frankly, it has highlighted a lot of the problems that have been present for years. Things like lack of broadband internet access that is impacting our students' ability to distance learn. It's also affecting individuals who would like to work from home, but their internet is not reliable, so they don't have the opportunities that some of the rest of us have. We've got to invest in rural broadband internet infrastructure statewide so that all people across the state can connect to high-speed internet, regardless of where they live. Another issue that has been highlighted has been lack of affordable health care. Health care has increased in price year after year after year, and it's time that we offer people affordable options. By investing in our health care when we need it the most, it will allow people to get tested and to get the treatments that they need during this global pandemic. I believe in opening up an immediate Minnesota Care buy-in, which comes at no taxpayer expense, but it allows people who are business owners and farmers, people who don't otherwise have health care provided through their employer, to buy into state insurance at cost, again, at no taxpayer expense. The other things that we need to do is support our schools with adequate funding. Now more than ever, our teachers are spread thin. We're asking more of them than ever before, and we've got to invest in our K-12 schools, especially in rural Minnesota. I also think that it's essential that we continue to invest in protective equipment for people working in elder care facilities and schools, as well as getting people back to work so our businesses can thrive again.
Thank you, Ms. Kimmel. Now, Representative Torkelson, the same question to you. What are the most important challenges facing your district, and what do you propose to address them?
Well, definitely the most pressing challenge right now is getting our economy back into operation. The restrictions as a result of the COVID disease that we are dealing with has really caused a lot of pain for a lot of businesses. In fact, some businesses are either on the verge of closing or have already closed. We need to reopen things safely, but we need to do it as quickly as possible. The effect of that on state government is that when the economy is slow, the revenues that come into state government are also slow, and when we come to next year's session and have to put together a balanced budget, we believe that we will be facing a significant deficit. We've been encouraging the governor to actually start making cuts now so that we have a smaller deficit to deal with next year, but he's been unwilling to do that in any big way. The sooner we can open things up, the sooner we will recover. Early in this COVID crisis, the governor restricted healthcare operations at many of our local hospitals. They were sitting empty and not performing the procedures that they should have been performing. And that not only affected those hospitals, it also affected the patients that needed this care. Just heard recently about women that needed mammograms that weren't getting them because of the COVID restrictions, and that will result in harm to patients too. So getting things opened up, moving forward as quickly as possible and as safely as possible is really the biggest challenge I see in my district. Also, it's very interesting that right now many employers, I should say, are looking for workers out here in Greater Minnesota. We need more workers to fill those jobs.
Thank you, Paul. Our next question will go first back to you, and it comes to us from a viewer in Brown County who wants to know what can be done to ensure that transportation projects such as those found in the Corridors of Commerce funding are equally funded in Greater Minnesota as they are in the metro area.
Well, thanks for that question. It's been a real challenge. I served as chair of the Transportation Committee in the 2017 session. And we did major amounts of Corridors of Commerce funding. But the first proposal that rolled out that session was really focused on the metro area. It was surprising to see the map of that, and the map was only around the northwest suburbs. All of that Corridors of Commerce money was going in one small area. We worked hard that session, and there was a second allocation of Corridors of Commerce funds that went to Greater Minnesota. And thank goodness we got that done. That actually funded the section of Highway 14 from Clarks Grove to Owatonna. Funding that section set us up for the more recent funding of Highway 14 from Cortland to New Ulm, and so from Nicollet to New Ulm. So it's all interrelated. As we move forward, if we do put more money into Corridors of Commerce, I intend to propose language that will make sure that Greater Minnesota gets its fair share. That's the mistake that was made. We didn't have language in the bill that assured that Greater Minnesota got that fair share on the first go-around. We had to take a second bite of the apple in order to make that happen.
Thank you, Paul. And now, Mindy, the same question to you. How do you respond to this viewer from Brown County? What can be done to ensure that transportation projects, such as those found in the Corridors of Commerce funding, are equally funded in Greater Minnesota as they are in the metro area?
Transportation funding is essential in Greater Minnesota. And living in New Ulm most of my life, I know that Highway 14 has long been one of the most dangerous highways in the state. And the most dangerous intersection on Highway 14 was within New Ulm as well. It's essential that we elect leaders who are going to ensure that transportation funding is equitable across the state, including in Greater Minnesota. As my opponent shared, he was the chair of the Transportation Committee when the rules changed, putting the Corridors of Commerce funding solely within the metro area. He says he's surprised, but he was the chair of this committee. He rewrote the rules, resulting in that change because it was based on traffic counts. And when the metro and rural Minnesota have to compete based on traffic counts, we will continue to lose the funding. Highway 14 was not funded until my opponent was no longer the chair of the Transportation Committee. He left that chair position in the last biennium. And when Democrats had control, that was when Highway 14 finally secured the funding that it needed to be planned and towards completion between Nicollet to New Ulm. I want people in my district to get home safe. I want our farmers to be able to access the roads that they need in order to get their products to market. The Highway 14 stretch is the most important in our district to this point, but we've got to plan ahead and we've got to look ahead to the next rural transportation roads that need more funding as well. I'm committed to fighting for these solutions. I'm committed to ensuring that rural Minnesota gets the funding that they need so our roads and bridges are maintained appropriately.
Thank you, Mindy. Our next question goes first to you, and it comes to us via the phone from a viewer in Springfield, and this viewer asks, in relationship to the agriculture in House District 16B, are you in favor or against design and size limitations for livestock farming operations?
First of all, I believe in local control. I think that local communities should be able to determine what is appropriate for their community. And I don't know that it's within the role of the state government to interfere with that local control. I think that a lot of people in communities such as Springfield that I've talked to want to see more farmers on the land and not less. Because as much as large corporations from outside of Minnesota and some outside of the United States are buying up farmland, and it's negatively impacting these small communities. When there are more farmers on the land, that means the land is cared for. It means that those farm families send their children to schools. It means they buy groceries at our local stores. And so I really want to support the communities coming together to determine what do they want their community to look like. And often it looks like more farmers on the land, because that's what helps our small communities thrive. I also want to add that when it comes to agriculture, I also would like to see tax reform that accounts for the lower land values and bases property tax on the production capacity to level the playing fields that our farmers have faced. I also think that there is a huge problem when farmers are being undercut for the cost that they incur, when their products are going to market, yet when we buy our produce and our meat at the grocery store, prices have shot up during this pandemic, and that money is not going to our farmers. That's a problem, and that's something that I seek to solve once I'm elected to the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. And Paul, the same question to you. In relationship to the agriculture in House District 16B, are you in favor or against design and size limitations for livestock farming operations?
Well, first off, I would remind viewers that I'm a farmer myself. I do have a livestock operation on my farm. We have a hog finishing building on the farm that was built about 15 years ago. A very important part of my farm operation supplies fertilizer in the form of manure that we're in the process of applying to our fields yet this fall. As far as size goes, you know, agriculture has changed dramatically over the years. Farms have gotten larger, but it's no different than other industries. Think of retail and how much larger stores have gotten, and it's the way of the world in some ways. It's driven by technology, but we do need to have room for small farmers too. And I think that we should have policies that promote both. We've seen some great success of small farms, especially in the metro area, farms that supply goods and services to farmers markets, and we should have a regulatory environment that allows them to thrive. But at the same time, we have in Brown County the largest, one of the largest pork producers in the world is based in Brown County. They have farm operations that they support all over Minnesota and in other states across the nation, very successfully raising healthy pork that is available in our grocery stores at a quite reasonable price. I do support agriculture, I'm part of it, and hope that we can have farmers of all sizes thriving and making money across the state of Minnesota.
Thank you, Paul. Our next question goes first to you again, and it comes to us from a viewer in Clemens. Where does your candidacy stand on the proposal of a newly constructed crude oil pipeline?
Well, thank you. I believe this probably refers to the Line 3 pipeline that has been in years in the application process and really should go forward. I very much think it should. It's already been built in our neighboring states or is in the process of being built in Wisconsin and North Dakota. The Minnesota section should be approved, should move forward. As part of the Transportation Committee, I understand how important it is to transport bulk goods in other ways than on our roads. If we have to haul everything in a semi, I love trucks, I love truckers, but when we put everything on the road, it's very hard on our roads. We need to utilize our railroads and we need to utilize our pipelines to move these goods and services, goods I should say. And Line 3 will do that effectively, efficiently, and very safely. It's replacing an old line that is really at the end of its life and is at risk of being a problem. They're operating it very effectively up to this point, but these things have a lifetime and that line needs to be replaced. I hope that the governor will move forward and get Line 3 built. It will make the bonding bill look small. It's a multi-billion-dollar project that will put thousands of Minnesota workers to work building a pipeline.
Thank you, Paul. And now, Mindy, the same question to you. Where does your candidacy stand on the proposal of a newly constructed crude oil pipeline?
Thank you for that question. My family has a lakeside cabin near where the new proposed Line 3 would go through. And so I've spent much time in that part of Minnesota. Even though it's outside of the district, I think this is an issue that is essential that we all become informed on. I have several concerns with the Line 3 pipeline. First of all, the fact that this pipeline is going through Native American reservation land. I think that we have got to include that community in this conversation. I think that they have rights to their land, and I think they deserve to have input and be a part of the planning process before it goes through. Second of all, I have concerns because northern Minnesota has some of the most clear and pristine waters in all of our state. And I think that if we are going to do things that runs a risk to those clear waters, we've got to talk about what we can do to protect them. So often, pipeline companies like this will put a pipeline in, and once it's run its course, will go bankrupt and leave the pipeline in to decay in the ground, thus causing risks to the water quality of northern Minnesota. I think we've got to ensure that there are assurances that the cost of the removal is already paid for before this line goes through, or at least assurances that it will be paid for in time. I do also have concerns about the insurance coverage for a leak. If this pipeline leaks into this pristine water basin, how much are we being insured for that cleanup? Is it realistic? I too have concerns about the safety of hauling that crude oil, whether it's trucks or trains. I understand that pipelines are often safer than other modes of transportation, but I think it's important that we look at this from all sides before making a decision.
Thank you, Mindy. Our next question goes first back to you. And this viewer wants to know, how would you ensure that every Minnesotan has affordable health care?
Thank you for that question. As someone who works in mental health care, I understand that people are facing an impossible situation. I have talked with multiple families about having to choose between paying for their medication or putting food on their table, or putting gas in their car, or paying for their copay for a mental health therapy session. These are impossible choices, and someone is always losing. Also, the problems with healthcare have been magnified during COVID. When people's healthcare is tied to their employment and they are furloughed or laid off, they lose their healthcare when they need it the most, not just for themselves, but also for their families. I'm committed to being a part of the solution so that all Minnesotans can have affordable healthcare. This includes, as I said in my opening statement, allowing all Minnesotans to buy into Minnesota Care at cost. Again, this comes at no taxpayer expense, but it allows people who would not otherwise have insurance or who cannot afford insurance on the marketplace to be able to buy in at a cheaper rate and know that they will be covered. I also think that it's important to review provider payments to ensure that providers are being paid adequately. I also support a universal single payer option, which eliminates copays, deductibles, and premiums, and allows people the affordable health care they need without having to worry about who is in their network and who is out of their network. I think that it's really important that we cover medical, dental, vision, and mental health so that people no longer have to crowdfund their health care, so that we don't have to do fundraisers in our communities when someone has cancer, that we know they will be cared for and treated respectfully and appropriately.
Thank you, Mindy. And now, Paul, the same question to you. How would you ensure that every Minnesotan has affordable health care?
Healthcare certainly is one of the most challenging issues we deal with. I spent 12 years on my local hospital board. I understand how challenging it is for a small town hospital to survive and thrive in today's healthcare environment. One of the big problems is that government-run healthcare does not supply adequate reimbursement rates for our hospitals and our other providers. As we put more and more people on government healthcare programs, we threaten the very existence of these services in greater Minnesota. We already have situations where expectant mothers who are going to have a baby have to drive sometimes hours just to have a baby. That could get worse if we drive more of our small hospitals out of business. Reimbursement rates are critical to that, and as of the way it's been working so far is our private health insurance companies have been paying the full rate and government-run health care has been paying the reduced rate. I don't believe that more government-run health care is the answer. And we also need to really define what health care really is. I think that the basics should be available to everyone, and in fact they in most cases are. But sometimes health care gets a little too broad and too expensive. These are difficult questions, and the other big player in this, of course, is the federal government. Federal government sets many of the rules, and many of the funding processes are put in place by the federal government, especially when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid. We don't have any control over that at the state level, but we are put in a position where we have to deal with it. So I think we need to protect our private health insurance system at the same time as we improve the government-run portion.
Thank you, Paul. And now we'll return to Ms. Kimmel for a 1-minute rebuttal.
I wanted to add to what Mr. Torkelson said about concerns with adequate payment to providers in greater Minnesota and the risk of rural hospital closures. As someone who works in mental health care, I can tell you that the health insurance companies negotiate the rates that are paid to different providers in different hospitals. And when you compare rates statewide, rural Minnesota clinics, hospitals, and providers get paid significantly less than the same provider for the same service in the metro. And so the problem here is that the insurance companies are setting low rates that are undercutting our rural communities when compared to people in the metro who get paid for the same service. I also want to add that private insurance companies get to pick their networks, so they can choose which providers you can and cannot see, thus resulting in people driving long distances to see a provider that's in network to them.
Thank you, Mindy. Our next question goes first to Representative Torkelson, and it comes to us from a viewer in Sleepy Eye. As an outstate representative, how can you help educate the citizens in outstate Minnesota about the very real discrimination faced by people of color, not only in the Twin Cities area, but in all areas of our state?
Well, the events of this summer certainly have highlighted the challenges that we have around race issues here in the state of Minnesota and all across the country. And they aren't just metro issues. Many of our rural communities have large minority populations. And in some communities it works well, in other communities it's more challenging. We do need to understand that racism is real and that there are issues that we need to deal with. This won't change overnight, but I think that we can make progress, and we have made progress. We do have a lot of laws on the books that prevent or make discrimination illegal in many forms, and recognizing that those laws need to be enforced is part of the issue. These things are not going to change overnight, and at the same time as I watched the situation develop in the metropolitan area this summer and the riots erupted, I cannot condone that kind of behavior. Rioting and destroying personal and public property is wrong. And I think that the call to defund police departments is wrong too. I'm endorsed by the Minnesota Police Officers Association and the Professional Firefighters Association of Minnesota. I believe that those police officers and firefighters need our support. They deserve to be treated with respect, and people that break the law should be punished. That's the way it works. Peaceful, appropriate protests are fine. Destroying personal and public property is wrong.
Thank you, Paul. And now, Mindy, the same question to you. As an outstate representative, how can you help educate the citizens in outstate Minnesota about the very real discrimination faced by the people of color, not only in the Twin Cities area, but in all areas of our state?
When it comes to understanding discrimination, I think the first thing that we can all do is to take some time to listen and to learn. I have been a member of several community groups focused on these exact things, of learning from our community and listening to what our community needs. Groups like New Ulm Forward and Welcoming Communities and being a part of the Right on Race program. I think that when it comes to cultural diversity, including people of color and Indigenous members of the community, it is essential that we take a look at our own privilege and listen to people who have different backgrounds and different experiences than ourselves. I think that it's important that we learn and listen so that we can stand up for the things that we most value. Stand up for a community that's welcoming of diversity and inclusive of all people, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of where they may originate, regardless of what their cultural background is, regardless of if they're LGBTQ. I think that it's important that we continue to support diversity in our community and stand up against discrimination in all of its forms. This includes continuing to support marriage equality so that all adults have the right to choose who they want to spend their life with and have the right to marry who they love and who they choose to have be a part of their family. I'm committed to continuing to listen and learn and engage in these kind of discussions and conversations going forward.
Thank you, Mindy. Our next question goes first back to you. How should our state and region best respond to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic?
When it comes to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think there's several things that we can do. First, we've got to help people get by, especially during this time. I think we've got to focus on those things that can help people continue to meet their basic needs. We've got to be really, really careful that when it comes to cuts that the legislators are looking at for this next term, that we are very careful with where that money is spent and continuing to spend money on getting people back on their feet, getting people back to work and getting the tax rolls back up again, filling empty storefronts, getting businesses hurt by the pandemic going again. Cutting in those places are only going to make things worse. I also think it's important that we focus on those most impacted, the businesses, the schools, healthcare workers, and elder care facilities. Things like continuing to support people who are on unemployment so they can meet their basic needs. Offering loans and grants, supports to get businesses back up and running again. Funding schools to promote safe and healthy schools, including giving all personnel in the school who need it rapid testing, PPE, hotspots or Chromebooks so that students have the technology they need to learn from home. And supporting healthcare workers with the protective equipment that they need to continue to serve their community. Affordable health care for all, regardless of income and employment status, and providing protective equipment and rapid testing for elder care facilities so that we can ensure that those frontline workers have access to the supports that they need to stay working.
Thank you, Mindy. And Paul, the same question to you. How should our state and region best respond to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, thank you for that question. I think first we got to thank those folks that have been responding all these months. The folks that work in our hospitals and nursing homes and other care facilities have been on the front line of this disease from the beginning, and they're generally doing a very good job of keeping people safe at the same time as they keep themselves safe as they do the essential services that are provided for the residents in our nursing homes and the patients in our clinics and hospitals. To recover from this, as I said earlier in my opening remarks, it's getting the economy going again is the key. We are going to be faced with a deficit next session, and starting new programs and spending more money is going to be impossible. We have to tighten our belts, but we won't have to tighten them as tight if the economy reopens and we get our businesses back operating, people working, people paying taxes is what makes our economy thrive and keeps things going in state government. The disease is something that we don't completely understand. We're learning as we go, but what's happened, I think what the most important thing that's happening is the development of the vaccines. Now that's happened with the leadership in Washington, D.C. that has invested heavily in getting these vaccines produced and tested, and the sooner that those vaccines are available to the public, and the more widely adapted and accepted they are, I think the sooner we get past this really challenging situation and back to a thriving economy that we had just a few short months ago. Early this year, things were going great guns until coronavirus showed up.
Thank you, Paul. Our next question goes first back to you. And this viewer wants to know, how would you help small town hospitals so that they don't close?
Well, it's challenging, and we've had critical access hospitals identified in the past. I think that's a good program that allows for small hospitals to get better reimbursement rates than larger hospitals. That needs to continue and be expanded. We need to make sure that they are utilized as effectively as possible. I personally think that your connection with your general practitioner is the key to good health care. And those local general practitioners really are not paid adequately for the work that they do. I think they should be the gateway, the kind of the controlling person when it comes to specialists. Specialists are great and absolutely necessary for many things, but our local general practitioners should be a key element of that process as patients go through that process and go to more specialized care. What too often happens is you get a test done with your local hospital or your local practitioner, then that test gets redone when you make the next step up to a specialist. Making sure that our tests are accepted at the local level, that we have adequate testing that then is accepted by those more specialized practitioners would be a big help in reducing healthcare costs and also making sure we have good revenues at the local level.
Thank you, Paul. Mindy, the same question to you. What would you do to help small town hospitals so they don't close?
There's several things that I would do to support small town hospitals to prevent them from closing. First of all, I think one of the most effective ways we can do this is by getting all people insured. There are still people who use our small town hospitals who do not have health insurance and cannot afford to pay their medical bills, leaving the hospital on the hook for the cost of those services. If all people had insurance, they would all be paid for. And so I think, again, a single payer healthcare system would allow for equal access statewide so that those bills can be covered by insurance. One of the bigger issues that I hear about when it comes to hospital closures is related to the provider shortages. That we have a hospital sitting in Springfield that's empty, in part because they need the staff to work it. And I think that a lot of small communities, when the main doctor retires, they have trouble filling that spot up again. And so things like offering loan forgiveness programs and more recruitment efforts for Greater Minnesota and for small towns. Part of what allowed me to come back to New Ulm after spending years in northern Minnesota was because I got a loan forgiveness program, because our community is a shortage area. It is viewed as a highly critical need area for mental health services. And by expanding loan forgiveness programs in rural hospitals, we can recruit more providers who want to work in our communities. I think that things like the hospital in Sleepy Eye is a really good example of a community coming together because they knew their medical services were needed locally. And I would support programs that give the community, the citizens, the first right to find ways to keep that clinic running so that they don't lose their local health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. And our next question goes first back to you again. And it's an interesting question, a little bit different. Because of the governor's mask mandate, shoplifters are getting bolder and shoplifting is becoming rampant among small businesses. What can the state do about it?
I'm sorry to hear that our businesses are facing difficulties related to shoplifting with the mask mandate. I understand that what we need right now is to support our small local businesses so they can stay running. And I think things like, can the state provide loans and grants to aid in some of this? Are there security systems that could be upgraded to get people on camera? And I would love to talk more with some of our small business owners about what they're seeing related to shoplifting and how they think the state can best support them in reducing those risks. I know that in the community of New Ulm, we have a responsive police force that does what they can to reduce crime in our community. And I have strong relationships with many of those officers. And so I would look forward to having an ongoing conversation about this. This is not something that has been brought up to me before, but I look forward to continuing to talk about this as we continue to wear masks out in the community. I support our small businesses, and I really want to see you all thriving once again. And so I hope that we can continue to have this conversation so I can learn more and find ways that we can support you during this time and hopefully reduce the impact of shoplifting.
Thank you, Ms. Kimmel. Representative Torkelson, what are your thoughts on this question? Because of the governor's mask mandate, shoplifters are getting bolder and shoplifting is rampant among small businesses. What can the state do about it?
Well, I have to admit this is the first I've heard of this issue. I didn't realize it was a new problem. I know shoplifting is something that is always a problem to some degree. I don't know exactly how we can change it. I do know that when people turn on the TV and see folks just walking into a store and walking away with whatever they want, it probably gives them the idea that maybe they should do that too. So we need shoplifting, of course, is against the law already. We don't need more laws. But identifying those folks that are taking advantage of this situation would be a big step in the right direction. I also would need to learn more about this before I could have any further recommendations to make at this point. I would hope that people would understand that when you steal from a store, you're stealing from the store owner and his livelihood, and that's a real shame. We need those businesses to survive and thrive in our communities, and I would hope that this is something that we can put a stop to very soon.
Thank you, Paul. And this will be our last question. And it goes first to you, Paul. Do you support the right to repair movement?
Well, thank you. That was a short question. Actually, I do not, but it's a complicated question. There certainly are situations where people can and should be able to repair their own equipment. But today's equipment, some of it is very sophisticated, and built into those computer programs and the code that makes the equipment work are many safety features. If we would open up all of that information to the equipment owner, there's the potential for disabling some of those safety features in that equipment, and the potential for people to be injured or to lose their lives as a result of that safety equipment not operating properly. This is a real risk, not only to those people that might make those changes that would make that equipment unsafe, but also to the owners of the equipment, to the company that produced that equipment that could be subject to a lawsuit because their safety mechanisms didn't work properly. You know, there was a time when farmers could pretty much fix anything on their tractor, but it's not that way anymore. It's the same with our cars. These pieces of equipment are very sophisticated. They require highly trained technicians to be able to do that work and have the testing equipment that actually can formulate what needs to be done and figure out what is out of kilter with this equipment. When I add up all the pluses and minuses of this situation, I do not think that this movement for repair your own, where you open up everything within the operating systems of this equipment, is appropriate.
Thank you, Paul. And Mindy, the same question to you. Do you support the right to repair movement?
Yes, I do support the right to repair movement. I think that it is unprecedented that we can buy a cell phone but can't fix it ourselves. I think that it doesn't make sense that farmers can invest tens of thousands of dollars in new equipment that they're not allowed to repair themselves or take to their local repair shop. When they have to take it to another community for a different licensed dealer to repair it, it comes with delays because often that shop has a backlog of equipment to repair, great distances to transport it. And I think that it's time that if we purchase something, we have the right to repair what we have purchased. This isn't a rental bill. This is about something that we spend hard-earned money on that affects our daily lives. And I think that we should have the ability to either repair it ourselves if we believe we're qualified to do so, or take it to someone who we trust. I think that so many times that small communities would really benefit from having local repair shops in every local community, so people have more choice, so they can shop around for the best deal or shop around for whose business they want to support. And I would support a right to repair bill because I think that we're capable of choosing who we trust to repair our equipment and where we want to take our goods to.
Thank you, Mindy. As we conclude this debate, each candidate will offer a 2-minute closing statement. First, we'll hear from Republican-endorsed incumbent Representative Paul Torkelson of Hanska.
Well, first I would like to thank Mark Fokin and the Pioneer Public Television System for hosting tonight's event. It has been my privilege to facilitate the public-private cooperation that has resulted in this modern facility. And I'm grateful I could help secure the resources needed for the equipment that makes it run. I would also like to thank my opponent for an informative discussion. Most importantly, I want to express my heartfelt appreciation for the voters' past support and for the opportunity to represent them in St. Paul. Because of COVID-19, this campaign has been different than anything we have seen in the past. Parades and community events have been canceled, along with many other in-person events. Thankfully, we have access to technology that has allowed us to develop new ways to communicate. Eventually, we will get a new normal, but in the meantime, I encourage everyone to support our economy by safely participating in every way you can. Take advantage of the goods and services offered by our local businessmen and women. A candidate needs to stand up for important issues, and I do. I am for a pro-life agenda. I am for supporting agriculture and our rural way of life. I am for protecting our Second Amendment rights. I am for fair funding of our rural schools, and I am for making Minnesota a business-friendly state. Should our campaign prevail, I look forward to serving you in the years ahead. During my time in the Minnesota House, I have worked hard to rein in wasteful spending within state government, allow you to keep more of what you earn, preserve your liberties, protect your Second Amendment freedoms, and fight for the rights of the unborn. I work to unite, not to divide, and I passionately believe that Minnesota can and will be up to the task of dealing with the challenges before us. I'm here tonight asking for your vote. Thanks again for listening, and do not forget to cast your ballot in the November 3rd general election.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. And now we'll hear from the DFL-endorsed challenger, Ms. Mindy Kimmel of New Ulm.
Thank you again for tuning into tonight's forum and hearing about our perspectives. We were able to cover topics related to transportation, agriculture, racial equality, COVID-19, healthcare, and the right to repair legislation. We were not able to talk about other important issues, including the fact that our teachers are burning out in the public schools, that we have huge underserved areas with rural broadband internet access, the one-year waiting list for child care openings, and the need for water infrastructure due to deteriorating water lines, that we need safe drinking water and wastewater disposal. My opponent told you about his experience as a legislator for the past 12 years, and I think 12 years is long enough. I support term limits because our legislator is out of touch. You deserve performance, not passiveness. You deserve hard work, not coasting. It's time to replace few ideas with new ideas. I built my campaign around the issues and ideas you've told me about on the phones or on our Zoom meetings. We must ensure the lives and well-being of all Minnesotans, focusing on those most in need right now, getting people back to work, stimulating small businesses, sustaining our schools, getting healthcare workers the support that they need, and keeping us all safe and healthy. Whether you've already voted or are going to the polls, now is the time for revitalization, getting things done, and someone who can lead our community, someone who will be a strong voice for rural communities like ours in the state legislature. I would urge you that if you still have a ballot sitting on your table, if you live in one of the mail ballot precincts, to please turn in your ballot as soon as possible by giving it to your county auditor's office directly. I, Mindy Kimmel, hope to earn your vote on or before Tuesday, November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kimmel. That concludes our program. Thanks to both candidates for joining us, and a special thanks to our viewers who sent along their questions. To watch this and other Meet the Candidates episodes, past or present, visit video.pioneer.org or use the free PBS video app. Just choose Pioneer PBS as your local station. Thank you for joining us on Meet the Candidates.